Day 2 of Chapter 22, Lesson 3. Today we're doing subtracting integers. Now, one might think that subtracting integers is a whole lot more confusing, so, well, you're not correct. It is the exact same thing as adding. So instead of doing -4 minus -1, what we're going to do is what we call add the opposite. So I change my subtraction sign to addition sign, and thinking back to lesson number 1, what's the opposite of -1? Well, it's +1. Now, if I look at my number line, remember, I start at -4, and then I'm adding a +1, so I'm left with a -3 as my answer. Now, if you want to do it the subtraction way, here's how it works. Okay, I start with a row of -4 counters, and then I take one of the -1s away. So I'm left with a -3. Now, that's a very not so complicated problem. So if we turn to the next page, look at the next slide, it gets a little bit more confusing. So I have a 3 minus 5. So let's do it add the opposite way. So I got 3 plus a -5. Because remember, what's the opposite of subtraction? Addition. What's the opposite of 5? You're right, -5. So I'm going to start at 3, and I'm going to count backwards 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And let's see if I get, now I've got -2. So let's see if I get the same answer. So step 1 was I start with 3 yellow dots because 3 is the positive. Okay. Now I have to take away 5 positive. Well, I don't have 5 positives to take away. So what they do is they add 0, which is, so they've added these 4 dots right here. Because what's a positive 1 and a -1? What's that equal? Well, that equals 0. A positive 1 and a -1. What's that equal? 0. So what you've done is you've added the value of 0. So it would just be like you giving your friend giving you a quarter, and then your friend giving that quarter right back to you. You have the same amount of money that you started with, it just looks different. Okay? So now that you have, now I can take away 5 of the positives. So I take away 5 yellow dots, and I'm left with 2 red. So that's how that works. And I see how that adding the opposite is just a little less confusing than adding the circles. Okay, I think for most of you, you may find this adding the opposite less confusing. Some of you may love the dots. So tomorrow, when you come in, great. Let's find the counters and you use them. Okay. Let's practice. Let's practice. So we'll do this together. So my first problem is -4 minus a +2. My answer should be -6. So let's work through it. Let's make sure we get the right answer. So I've got -4 plus a -2. So I'm going to start at -4, and then I'm going to go backwards 2. So I went backwards 2, and I ended up at -6. So far, so good. So the counter way, okay, this is what I started with. That's what I started with, -4. Remember, I added 2 pairs of 0. So -1 and +1 is 0, -1, +1, 0. Now it tells me to take away 2 of the positives. And what am I left with? 1, 2, 3, 6 negatives. All right. Let's look at this problem down here. So if I've got 6 minus a -1, well, that's the same thing as 6 plus 1. So if I start off at the 6 and I add 1, I should end up with the 7. Okay, so here's the counter way. I've got 6 counters. Remember, I have to add one group of 0. So a negative 1, or I'm sorry, a positive 1 and a negative 1 gives me a 0. So I added one group of 0. Then I take one of the negatives away, and I'm left with just 7. So here I've set you up for success with your, with your circles, or you can add the opposite. So go ahead, give the video a pause, and I want you to try whatever method that you think is the easiest. So good luck, and we'll see if you're right when you get back. Welcome back. So here's what I have. I start with 5, okay, and then I change the subtraction sign to an addition sign. The negative 9 becomes a 9 because those are opposites. Again, the opposite of subtraction is addition. Opposite of negative 9 is a positive 9. So 5 plus 9 is 14. So if I start at 5, move over 14 spots on the number line, start at 5, move over 9 spots on the number line, I get 14. So if you dotted it up, I started with 5. Then I added 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 zeros. And remember, a 0 is a positive 1 and a negative 1, because positive 1 plus negative 1 equals 0. So I added my zeros. Then I get rid of 9 negatives. So all these 9 negatives, they disappear. So I'm left with 14 positive dots. 14 yellow, which is the positive. Okay. Alright, so moving on down here, I have negative 3 plus a negative 4. So if I start at the negative 3, count backwards 4, I get 7. So that's the add the opposite way. Okay. If I'm doing it the dot way, I start with 3. I add my 4 groups of 0. Okay, and then I'm going to take away these 4 positives that are leaving us. Okay, they're leaving us. So I'm left with 7 negatives. Okay. So tomorrow, when we come into your bell work, you got a choice. You can use the number line that's given to you, or you can find the counters and use the counters. Whichever way you prefer, that's what you can do. Okay, so good luck. Hope you do well on your bell work tomorrow. We'll see you bright and early.